folks, it's Brittany Jackson from Learning Technologies, and today we're going to talk about advanced settings for quizzes. So here I am in the Moodle Playground, and if I come up here and turn on the editing by clicking on that green button, it's turned red. We can see the crosshairs and the edit buttons, so now we know we can edit this document. So if I come down here and click on Add an Activity or Resource, and then I click on Quiz, here we have to put in the name just like always. And then you can put in a description if you'd like and whether or not you want that to display on the course page here. Under timing, you can mark when you want the quiz to open. You just click the little enable button and then you can change the date and time. You can change when the quiz is closing. Same thing, click on the little check mark and then you've got the date and time you can choose from. If you want to put in a time limit, you put in the check mark here and you can put in however many hours, minutes, days, weeks, seconds. And then when the time expires, you can choose whether or not open attempts are submitted automatically. There's a grace period of when open attempts can be submitted, or attempts must be submitted before time expires. Attempts must be submitted before time expires is the default. However, this is one that I would change to open attempts are automatically submitted. And that's because if a student starts a quiz and for whatever reason gets kicked out, if we choose it so that they are submitted automatically, you will at least see that they've submitted whatever was in that quiz at that time when they were kicked out or anything like that. So I say if you do open attempts are submitted automatically, that ensures that you receive the answers. Sometimes students forget to hit the submit button and then they realize it after the fact, and when the quiz is closed, then they can't do anything else. So I would encourage going for open attempts are automatically submitted. Under grade, we've got the grade categories. So if you've got categories listed, in this course I do, you can put it under quizzes. You can always come back in here and change the grade category if you need to. That's always a possibility. The grade to pass, you can put that in. I tend to leave it blank. Attempts allowed, you've got unlimited, you can go 1 to 10. I tend to leave it as unlimited, and that's mostly because I would prefer students master the content and go through it a couple of times if they needed to, versus getting one single grade and that's it. And then the grading method, you can do highest grade, you could do an average grade, first attempt or last attempt. So you have discretion on that, and I just tend to leave it as unlimited because, again, I would prefer the students be able to take the course multiple times and to actually master the content than to not and have to be subjected to specific times that they've taken it. Now, certain majors and disciplines do require that, and so that makes total sense. So the default is unlimited, but feel free to change that to whatever may make the most sense for you and your course. Layout, if you click here, there's a little show more button, and we've got this new page. So every question could be on a new page. All of the questions could be on one page. And then you could do every 2, 3, 4, up through 50 questions on a page. I tend to say every question on a new page, just because then students can focus on that one question, go to the next page, and focus on that question, and it's a little bit clearer and easier for them. Navigation method. So for navigation method, you can have it be free or sequential. So if it's free, that means they can go back and forth between questions within the quiz. So they could hit the previous button a few times if they needed to. If you choose sequential, they can only go in the order. They can never go back to a question that they answered previously. So whatever they put there is what it's going to be. Under question behavior, we're going to pull this little drop down to show more as well. But you've got shuffle within questions. So you've got all the questions there, and then they have to shuffle. It shuffles between those questions. The default is yes. So that way not everybody's going in the exact same order. How questions behave, you've got adaptive mode with penalties, deferred, feedback with CBM, immediate feedback with CBM, and interactive with multiple tries. I typically leave it at deferred feedback. That seems to be the most straightforward. And then each attempt builds on the last. I typically say choose yes, because for whatever reason, they have to go back out, internet kicked them off or anything like that. Then they don't have to re-enter any of that information in as long as it's been saving along the way. They might have to do one question versus the 10 questions they've already done. Under review options, here's where people get a little confused. So during the attempt means when the students are in the exam. And here, you can't really change these. It makes sense that the only thing they can do during the attempt is view the attempt. Immediately after the attempt, you could have it where they can see the attempt, in which case, if you want that, you put a check mark. You see now that these other check marks have all come open and I can click on any of them now. If I keep that off, there's only certain things I can do. I can only give them points, or they can only see their points, or they can only see the overall feedback. But I want them to be able to see the attempt because I want them to be able to learn from it. And if you want them to know whether it was correct or not, you could do that. I might suggest waiting on that until after the quiz is still open or after the quiz is closed. And then points, how many points do they receive? I tend to put a check mark there for this one because they can see how many points they got. I might hold off on the specific feedback overall. So I typically do the attempt and points and immediately after the attempt, while the quiz is still open. So if this student completed it, but all the other students in the course are still working on it, again, I would probably put the attempt and the points. This way they can't be sharing the correct answers with anybody else. And then after the quiz is closed, here they can see everything. So that makes perfect sense. The quiz is closed, nobody else can take it, they can see everything. Under appearance, we have a little show more here, so pull that down. But show the user's picture. I tend to leave this as is and don't change it too much. Decimal places in the grade, I tend to leave it as 2. Decimal places in question grades, I leave it as the same. That way it's not confusing. And show blocks during quiz attempts, I normally leave that as the default of no. Here we've got a safe exam browser. I highly discourage you right now of using the safe exam browser. It hasn't been tested on the iPads. I would say hold off on using this one. We do have a safe exam browser that's not specifically in Moodle, if that makes sense. So we've got it integrated with Moodle, but it is not a part of our platform. So it's called Respondus, and there's instructions in the section of the Teaching with Technology Resource Center about Respondus and how to incorporate it. And as always, if you wanted to, you can reach out to us and we can assist you on that front. Extra restrictions on attempts. I can put the show more. This, I tend to leave as is. You could require a password. You could do browser security, but again, that falls under the safe exam browser, so I wouldn't change that. And you could allow the quiz to be attempted offline. I don't tend to change any of these settings here. Overall feedback, if you want to put, specific feedback, if they get 100%, you want to tell them a great job, you can put that here. And if you wanted to say that it was a particular grade boundary here, so 50%, then they'll get that feedback when they go through. I don't typically put much in here because I'm going to respond within the quiz if I need to. And then we get down to these ones that we see in every type of assignment or activity. We've got the availability, show on the course, hide from students, make available but not shown. If you're not quite ready for this to be available to students, you're still working on putting it together, I would choose hide from students. And if students are taking these in groups, you can do separate groups or visible groups. I don't typically put people in groups for a quiz or an exam, so I tend to leave that as is. You can restrict access, so maybe they have to complete a different assignment in order to take this exam. So you can base off of activity completion. You could do if it's a specific date, if it's a specific grade they had to get on something else. The groups or groupings, a single user profile, or restriction set. Activity completion, students can mark it as completed, don't indicate activity completion, or show activity as complete when conditions are met. That's really more if you are specifying something related to activity completion. So if they needed to complete an assignment in order to take this exam, or they need to complete this assignment in order to take something else, then you probably want to have it so that once it's marked as complete and the conditions are met, then they can move on. So you would probably want to require the view, maybe require the grade, and maybe a passing grade if that makes the most sense. I tend to leave, for me personally, manually mark the activities completed. Under tags, we've got the standard tags. Again, I typically leave this as is, and same with competencies. I leave that as is. So once I've got this all entered, I hit save and return to course. Now I can see that I've got this quiz here. Click on it. Right now there's still no questions in this quiz, so I'd have to come over to this gear, choose edit quiz. You can also change the maximum grade that you can have on a quiz. So those are the advanced features for quizzes in Moodle. As always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help and we're in the library. And as always, happy Moodling!